Sometime around 2011, if you walked into a McDonald's in Buenos Aires, something was missing. The Big Mac, the most famous burger on earth, had vanished from the menu boards. No photo, no price. You could still order one, but you had to know to ask. And when you did, it was strangely cheap. Cheaper than a quarter pounder. Cheaper, almost, than it had any right to be. That was not an accident. According to reporting by Public Radio International and local economists, it was a decision. A government had reached into a fast food restaurant and quietly leaned on the price of a sandwich, because that sandwich had become a lie detector, and the government was lying. If that interests you, subscribe, because this channel covers what most people slept through. Part 1. The Bathtub Idea. Start in September 1986. The Economist, a British newspaper, published a small item written by an editor named Pam Woodall. It was meant to be light, almost a joke. The idea had come from an offhand comment, someone remarking on how absurdly expensive burgers had become in parts of Europe. Woodall later described it as a bathtub moment, a flash. What if the price of one identical standardized burger sold in country after country could tell you something true about money? Here is the logic, in plain terms. A Big Mac is roughly the same object everywhere. Same beef, same bun, same sauce. It uses local labor, local rent, local ingredients. So if you compare what a Big Mac costs in New York to what it costs in Tokyo, and convert both into dollars, the gap should tell you whether a currency is priced too high or too low. Economists call this idea purchasing power parity. The theory says that over time, the same thing should cost the same amount everywhere once you account for the exchange rate. If it doesn't, the currency is out of line. Woodall's burger made that abstract idea something you could taste. They called it Burgernomics. And the joke did not stay a joke. Within a decade, it was in economics textbooks. Today, The Economist tracks the burger in over 50 countries and has kept the raw data public since the year 2000. A throwaway item about hamburgers became one of the most cited informal measures of currency value in the world. Part 2. The country that feared a burger. Now go back to Argentina. By the late 2000s, Argentina had a problem it did not want the world to see. Prices were rising fast. Independent economists put inflation at around 25% a year, one of the highest rates on the planet. The government said otherwise. Officially, inflation was under 10%. That gap was not a rounding error, it was the whole game. If people believe inflation is 10%, they ask for 10% raises. Government debt tied to inflation pays out less. One Buenos Aires research firm, ACM Consultores, later estimated that understating inflation saved the Argentine state around $6.8 billion between 2007 and the censure in 2013. But there was a catch. The Big Mac Index didn't care what the official numbers said. It just watched the price of a burger climb. And a rising burger priced against a suspicious exchange rate told the real story. So, according to Argentine economists interviewed at the time, the Commerce Secretary Guillermo Moreno, a man already known for phoning companies and telling them to hold their prices, allegedly did exactly that with McDonald's. Keep the Big Mac low, keep it off the boards. The reported result? A Big Mac selling for around 30% less than comparable burgers on the same menu. A government had found the lie detector, and instead of telling the truth, it tried to fool the machine by fixing the price of a sandwich. Part 3. The cover story. Publicly, of course, none of this was happening. When local reporters asked McDonald's why its most famous product had disappeared from the displays, the company gave a marketing answer. It said it was simply promoting newer products, like a burger it was pushing called the Triple Mac. Nothing to see. Just business. The government stayed silent on the burger entirely. But the cover went far beyond one sandwich. This was a state defending a number. In 2011, President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's government took a harder line. It pursued independent economists in court, reportedly fining and prosecuting analysts who published inflation figures that contradicted the official rate. Al Jazeera covered the crackdown that July. The message was blunt. Do not print a number we did not approve. So on the surface, inflation under control, economists silenced, burger conveniently cheap. Underneath, a currency losing value, prices doubling, and a hamburger that refused to lie. That is the gap this whole story lives in, the official story and the burger. Part 4. When the bill came due, you cannot fake a number forever. Eventually, someone with more weight than a hamburger notices. On February 1st, 2013, the International Monetary Fund did something it had never done in its entire history. It formally censured a member country for producing false economic data. That country was Argentina. Read that again. In roughly 70 years, across dozens of financial crises and cover-ups, the IMF had never issued a declaration of censure over data until Argentina's inflation numbers. Bloomberg reported it plainly. The first nation ever censured by the IMF for economic data. The consequences were not abstract. When a country's official numbers can't be trusted, everything built on them wobbles. Investors demand higher returns to lend. Savers watch their money quietly lose value while the state insists everything is fine. Workers negotiate raises against a fake baseline and fall behind in real life. And trust, the thing an economy actually runs on, drains away. Years later, even America's own public radio pointed to Argentina as the textbook example of what happens when a government meddles with its own data. People stopped believing the numbers at all. It took a new government, a rebuilt statistics agency, and nearly 4 years before the IMF lifted the censure in November 2016. The lie was expensive, and it started to unravel, in part, because of a burger that would not cooperate. Part 5. What a burger still knows. Here is why this matters to you right now. The Big Mac Index is not perfect, and its own creators are honest about that. In the very interview this story is drawn from, the Economist's editors admitted the truth. Professional traders do not use it to bet on currencies in the short term. If a signal that simple actually predicted the market, they said, the pros would have already used it up. Over the long run, 6 to 10 years, it has been a weak pull toward where currencies drift. No more. But that was never really the point. The point is that a standardized object priced honestly tells the truth about money even when governments won't, and it still does. As of The Economist's January 2025 reading, the most expensive Big Mac in the world was in Switzerland, around $7.99, nearly 40% above the United States price of $5.79. The cheapest was in Taiwan at about $2.38. By that same measure, the Japanese yen was undervalued against the dollar by close to half. Those aren't just fast food trivia. A cheap burger can mean a currency buying less on the world stage. An expensive one can mean a rich economy with a strong currency and high wages. The sandwich is a window. So sit with the real lesson. In a world where official statistics can be massaged, silenced, or sewed into shape, the closest thing to an honest broker turned out to be a fast food burger sold on nearly every continent. It doesn't take orders. It doesn't fear a commerce secretary. It just costs what it costs. A government once found that so threatening that it hid the burger from its own menus. That should tell you something, not about hamburgers, but about how fragile the numbers you're handed every day really are. Most people slept through this. You didn't. Subscribe, because there's more.